Hello everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Mel and I hope you are having the most fantastic of days. And today we're going to be doing my Our Fantasy Bingo TBR. This is one of my favorite things to do every single year. It's just so much fun to pick out for all the prompts and fill out your bingo card. If you have no clue what I'm talking about, I will link all of the information down in the description box below. But basically, Our Fantasy Bingo is a bingo card that is created by the lovely people over at Reddit. Now, I am terrified of Reddit. I don't spend a lot of time over there, but I do love doing this bingo card every year. It really pushes me out of my comfort zone, has me pick up books that I might not normally have picked up, and I like just seeing what kind of things I read throughout the year that I normally wouldn't have thought had stuff in them, if that makes any sense. So basically, this is a bingo card that runs April 1st to March 31st. This is my bingo card from last year, and there are several different modes and several different ways that you can do this. I usually go for a blackout, meaning I complete the entire board, and I try to do both hero mode and hard mode. Hero mode is basically just reviewing every single book that you read. I do that because I'm here talking to you guys about every single book that I read. And then the hard mode has an extra prompt on top of the prompt that's already given, just to make it a touch harder. For 2023, I did manage to hit hard mode for every prompt except for one. I did not complete the Advent of Winter, so I cannot complete hard mode for the 5 short stories, which kind of stinks, but it's okay, we're rolling with it. You can also swap out one prompt, and for this one, I swapped out the book club prompt. I don't love that one, it's kind of hard. I'll explain it in more depth when we get there. They encourage as few rereads as possible. They want you to branch out and try a different author, so an author can only be used one time on the board, and you can read like novellas and graphic novels and stuff. They just suggest keeping it to a minimum. I don't know exactly what to a minimum is, but I usually try to only do 1 or 2 on the board at maximum. I think those are all of the rules. I don't really know that there are a ton of like rules, and I don't submit my card, so I just try to follow the rules as best as I can. 2024 has one of the best bingo boards that I have seen them do over the 3 years that I've been participating, but it's also one of the hardest, which strangely makes me very excited. I want to be challenged. I want to pick out books that I wouldn't normally read. It is the one that I've been the most excited for sure, but it's definitely a little bit tricky. So our first prompt is to read a book that is first in a series, and the hard mode for this one is that the series needs to be more than 4 books long. I feel like this is not hard for me. I don't even want to know how many series last year, and a lot of the series that I read are longer. I prefer trilogies, but I find that a lot of the series that I end up reading end up being 4 or 5 books. For this one, there's a series that I know I'm going to be starting either in April or May that is 4 books long, and that is the Kindred's Curse Saga or Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. This is the Indie Archive pick for the month of May, so I know that I'm going to be reading it. It's a fantasy romance series that I am so very excited to read. I've heard so many people talking about how incredible this series is, and so I just cannot wait to pick it up. It's a slow burn enemies to lovers about a world colonized by gods and a young girl's mother's disappearance, and a daughter trying to unweave the dark mysteries that her mother left behind. I think this has dragons in it. I've heard that it is just slow burn tensiony goodness, and I cannot wait to pick it up. The next square is alliterative title. So basically this is just to read a book that has multiple words with the same first letter. I thought that this was going to be the easiest prompt on the board. I was like, yeah, I got this, no big deal. And that's true if we're doing easy mode, which is 2 words. But for hard mode, there has to be 3 or more words, and this was a whole heck of a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be. I could do the book that broke the world, but I don't know, the these in that, and I just don't count those as words half the time, so it feels a little bit like a cheat, but I may end up doing it anyway. The one that I'm actually gonna put in this square though, Dusk or Dark or Dawn or Day, I think is the title, and it's by Shauna McGuire. This is a fantasy novella. I don't really know a whole lot about it. I saw it recommended on the Reddit recommendation thread, which is a really handy resource if you guys are stuck on a prompt. But it's Shauna McGuire. I like Shauna McGuire's writing. It has many words that starts with a D in the title, so I think this is the one that I'm going to be going with for this prompt. If you guys have any other suggestions of books that you think that I will like, this is absolutely a free-for-all forum. Please give me more suggestions down in the comments because I want options. The next one is Under the Surface, and that is to read a book that at least in part takes place underground or underwater. But if you want to complete the hard mode, at least half of the book has to take place underground or underwater. And for this one, I think I'm going to be going with The Flames of Mira by Clay Harmond. This is a book that I've had on my TBR for a very long time, and I loved the first chapter of this when I read it for my reading the first chapter of all my unread fantasy books. I ended up giving it a 7.5, 8 out of 10, but I just never picked it up, and I don't really know why. I think over half of this book is set underground. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this takes place in a world that has boiling volcanoes under Mira's frozen lands. That world of complete contradictions, extremes of fire and ice just sounds so interesting, and I cannot wait to pick this up. Some other options that I had for this one were Faithless by Graham Austin King and The Fade by Chris Wooding. I think I was gonna go with The Fade until this one was brought to my attention. It sounded interesting too, but I have read a Chris Wooding in the past, and so it made me a little bit nervous picking that one up. Next up we have Criminals, and this is one where the main character is a criminal, a thief, something, assassin, some kind of criminal, and the hard mode for this one is that it is featuring a heist. I had two different options for this one. I think the one that I'm going to be going with is The Darkness Before Them by Matthew Ward. This definitely has a main character that is a criminal. She is a thief in the undercity, and I believe she is going to have a heist to steal something of the king's and rekindle a rebellion. I think that I'm going to be reading this relatively soon after posting this TBR because I've been so excited for it, and I think a lot of you are wanting me to read it, so I'm excited to pick this one up. But the other option that I had for this was The Thousand Doors of Ardor Ben by Tyler Whitesides. I don't know much about this other than, again, he is a thief. There is definitely a heist in this. I think there's something about dragon poo, if I'm remembering correctly. I'd have to ask Rachel to clarify that one. But this book is chunky, and I've heard mixed things about it, so I'm a little hesitant to go into this. I know that it is a humorous type of story, and humor and I are very hit or miss, usually miss, so I think I'm going to go with The Darkness Before Them instead. And for the last prompt on the first row, we have Dreams, and this is any book featuring dreams. The hard mode for this, though, is a book that features dreams that are not of any kind of mystical quality, and they can be dreams or nightmares. This one was extremely hard because if a book is going to have a mystical dream in it, it's a lot of times in the description. But if it's going to have a normal dream, it just comes up and it happens and you just have to catch it. So for this one, I think I'm going to go with Vows and Ruins by Helen Schur, just because Cassidy recently read it and said that it did have normal dreams featured within it. I think there are some mystical dreams as well, but there's definitely some normal ones. This is the second book in the Blood and Steel series, and I really liked Blood and Steel. I'm excited to continue on and learn more about Wilder and Thea's relationship. This is a training session, a mentee-mentor fantasy romance. If you have any other suggestions for me, leave them down in the comments because I'm definitely looking for options for this prompt. Okay, moving on to the next row, we have Entitled Animals. Basically, this is where the title has an animal in the title. So the Raven Tower is an example that they gave, Wolf Song, A Feast for Crows, all of those. But the hard mode is an animal that is of a mystical nature. So a dragon or a griffin or something like that. For this one, I don't have the book yet because I don't think it's quite out, but I'm going to be going with Dragon Rider by Taryn Matharu. This is a, like I said, new release that I'm highly anticipating. Look at that cover. It just looks so good. I cannot wait to try it. And obviously it has a dragon in the title. The next one is one that I don't like. This one was a really hard square for me, and that is Bards. And basically it's to read a book where the main character is a bard, a storyteller, a poet, a musician, something to do with music and word of mouth. But the hard mode is that the character has to be explicitly called a bard. And I had two different options for this one, both of which terrify the crap out of me. So if you have any other choices, leave those down in the description box as well. The first one is The Time of Contempt by Andrew Sapkowski. I think is how you say his name. I can't. I messed it up. I know I did. But this is the second official book of the Witcher series. I've read the two short story books and then the first book in the series, and I'm on to this one. I believe it's this one. The Witcher is a very complex epic fantasy. I like the show. I like watching Henry Cavill run around, I'm not gonna lie. I did like the books, but they are a little bit of a struggle. I feel like the translation is not great, which stinks because I think that they have a lot of good qualities to them. But we definitely have a bard, and he is called a bard in here. He's one of my favorite characters in the show. The other option that I was on the Reddit recommendation thread, so I don't know 100% if this counts until I read it, but that is The Worded Man by Peter V. Brett. I've heard that there is a character in here that is called a bard. I want to read this one. This is a series that I've really been anticipating, but I'll be honest, it scares the crap out of me. I'm so nervous to pick this up and I don't know why. I don't know, it's just got that kind of epic fantasy vibe. So we'll see which one of these I end up getting to, but I would love other options. Then we have prologues and epilogues. That's a book that has a prologue or an epilogue. The hard mode is that they have both. This one is relatively easy for me. A lot of books that I read have both prologues and epilogues, but the one that I'm going to tentatively place on the TBR is A House of Bane and Blood by Alexis Menard. I am going to be getting a special edition of this, I believe, so I hope that I like it. Definitely has a prologue and an epilogue in it. Next up is a self-published or indie publisher. That's just to read a book that's self-published. And if you've been watching my channel, you know that like 70% of my reading now is indie, especially when we bring in fantasy romance. So I have many choices. The hard mode for this is to read a book that has less than 100 ratings at the time of you reading it. And I am currently finishing up The Last Fang of God for SPFBO. It was a finalist for SPFBO 9. The vlog for that should be out very soon. But this one has less than 100 ratings at the time of me reading it. I will leave exactly how many while I'm filming this video up here for you guys, but definitely counts, so I'm just gonna slide that one into that spot. Next up we have Romantasy, and this is a book that features romance as the main plot. This one was a little bit difficult because the hard mode for it is an LGBTQ plus book, which is fantastic. I love that that's a prompt. However, I don't read a lot of super smutty books, and I find that a lot of the LGBTQ plus books are super smutty. They're like male, female romances, why choose romances that tend to be very smutty. And that's just not usually what I love. I like a good balance of like romance and plot in my books. There are two that I think I can choose from for this one. The first is Feybound by Sarah Ella Reefy. The main complaint I've heard about this book was that people were expecting it to be more like The Final Strife and have a romance but not be romantic. And then this one ended up being more of a fanro, and so they were like, wait, I don't like that. So I think it will count for this prompt. It definitely has a sapphic relationship in it, and I'm excited to read it because I liked The Final Strife quite a bit. And the other one is one that I'm not sure about, but I really want to give it a try. This was on a list. I'm not 100% sure if it counts, but you guys can tell me if you read it. And that is Cushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey. This is supposed to be like one of the OG fantasy romance books. One of the original ones that like sparked off the genre. I don't know if that's 100% true. That's just what the internet tells me. So I wanted to try it. Let me know down in the comments if you have any other recommendations for me. I am scared of why choose. I'm willing to try it, but I'm scared of it. I think that there's a Melissa K. Rorick that might count, but not for the first book. So we'll see when I get there. Next we have Dark Academia. So any book that's considered a dark academia. They were pretty loose with the definition on this one. And the hard mode is a mundane school. So like the school can't be trying to eat you like it is in Naomi Novik's Skullman series. I think for this one, I'm going to be able to count the last book in the Atlas 6 series. This is the third and final book that I still really need to read. And that school was not as mundane as I am remembering it. So I don't think this is going to count for hard mode. If you have any suggestions for hard mode, leave me a comment down below. I could retry An Education in Malice, but I didn't love that one. If I needed to, I could do it. But I'm looking for Dark Academia that like really fits my vibe, and I have such a hard time figuring that out. So if you've got suggestions, let me know. The next is Multi-POV. And this is a book that has at least 3 points of view in it, so not a dual POV, but a multi-POV. The hard mode is a book that has at least 5 points of view. I don't like those. But I'm willing to try. Obviously, I'm willing to try. This one was a little harder because you don't really know how many POVs a book is necessarily going to have. Other than 3, a lot of times it's not listed on the back of the book. So I enlisted help. I asked the Patreons. A lot of them have read this book and said that it had like 7 main POVs and like 3 or 4 different POVs that were sprinkled throughout. And that's Sons of Darkness by Gulhav Mahatni. This is a beautiful special edition from the Broken Binding. It is shiny. It has beautiful stencil edges. I started this one and went, whoa, I'm a fantasy reader. Normally things don't completely fly over my head, and this one was gonna try. So I'm excited to read this. It's an Indian-inspired fantasy, which I don't read a lot of. I don't know if I've ever read, so I really do want to give this a go, but it definitely scares me. Editing Mel here, coming to say that I realized as I was editing this that I skipped an entire prompt on the board. I was afraid that was going to happen, and it did. This prompt that I skipped was published in 2024. The hard mode for this one is that it's also the author's first published novel. For this one, I'm going to be going with Five Broken Blades. I'm very excited for this one. This edition is absolutely gorgeous, but I'm so excited for this book. I don't know how I missed this prompt entirely, but I did want to tell you guys what I was planning to read for it. I do think that there will be several books that I can slide into this spot because there's so many new releases coming out this year, but for now, that's the one I'm going with. Then we have a book with disability rep, and this can be a character that has a mental or physical disability. And the hard part for this one is that the main character has a physical or mental disability. For this one, I think I'm going to be going with God Killer by Hannah Kaner. I think that somebody said that she is missing part of her leg. I don't know that that's actually in the synopsis, but that is what someone told me. So if I am incorrect, let me know, but this is supposed to have gods and monsters and secrets. I love a gods related story. I've heard so things about this one, so I am cautiously optimistic about it, but I own it and I do want to try it. So right now this one's going on the list, but I do feel like I read a decent amount of books that have a mental or physical disability that I could throw on there if I don't get to this one. The last space on the third row is a book that was published in the 1990s. The hard mode for this one is to read a book where the author is still publishing books within the last 5 years. And I think I had 3 different options for this one. I thought it was going to be a lot harder. 4 if you count a reread, but I don't know which one I'm going to go with. So let me know which one you think I'm going to like the best down in the comments, and that's the one that I will prioritize. The reread I was considering is Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. I read this one last year. It was just not a good time for me. We'd recently lost a pet. We had a vacation not go as planned, and so I did not love this one. But I do want to retry it where I can like give it my full focus, not try to rush through it, give it plenty of dedicated time, because I want to love this series, but I'm extremely intimidated by it. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is one of the Anne Bishop books. I will leave it up here. I forget the name of it now, but she is still publishing a young adult series that's pretty popular, so that one would work. I believe, yeah, this one was published in 1988, but the second book was published in the 90s, so if I love this one, I could proceed onto the second book in the series. And the last one, the one that I'm leaning toward, is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marlier, I think is how you say that. This one was published in 1998, I believe, and she has still published a book in 2021, so it would definitely count. Moving down to probably my most hated prompt on this entire board is Orcs, Trolls, and Goblins, oh my. I don't read orcs, trolls, or goblins, oh my. I don't like them very much. I tried to read the Jonathan French book and I DNF'd it within like 10 pages. That vibe is not really my thing. It tends to be a little more crude, a little more choppy in the writing style, and it's just not my favorite. But this is a prompt. This is a prompt that we've got. The one that I'm leaning toward is Heart of Night and Fire by Nisha J. Tooley. This one has a character, and I will leave the name of the type of character up here because I'm not very good at pronouncing it. But it is a Rakasha, and it's in Hindu mythology a type of demon or goblin. So I definitely think that this one would count. I've read a book by this author before and really didn't like it, but I am not one of those people that says if I hate an author once and I'm never going to try their books again, because if I said that, I wouldn't have read my favorite book of the year last year, which was The Will of the Many. So I am willing to give this author another try. This is the first option. The second option is The Demon Awakens by R.A. Salvatore. I've never read anything by R.A. Salvatore before, but I do really like this cover. I think they just got a reprint of them, and I've heard that I should give his writing a try, so this is another option. There are goblins in this book, so it would definitely count, but yeah, I need recommendations that are not Books and Bone Dust or Legends and Lattes. I've read both of those, and I want something a little different, you know? Next up we have a space opera, and that is obviously To Read a Sci-Fi. That is a space opera that's a subgenre of sci-fi. I don't really know how to explain that. It's mostly set in space. And the hard mode is to read it by a marginalized author, a woman, a trans author, anybody that is of a marginalized gender identity. Actually, it's not just a marginalized author, but a marginalized gender identity. So I have a couple of women on my TBR. The first one is actually a sci-fi romance that I've never, I don't read very much sci-fi romance, but that is Starbringer by Tracy Wolff. This one is set in space and there are like 9 planets on the hunt for survival. One that I also own is The Blighted Stars by Megan O'Keefe. I've read a book by hers before. I really liked the second half, did not love the first half, but I do kind of want to give this author another try. And then I realized as I was picking this book up that I owned the wrong one. This is like the last book in the series and I meant to buy the first book in the series, but we're going to ignore that fact, and it's Translation State by Ann Leckie. I need Ancillary Justice, but Ancillary Justice is also an option on here. Next up, we have one of their recurring prompts. They said this will be a prompt every year on the board, which I think is really cool. It's just going to change the hard mode every year, and that is an author of color. This year, it's to read an author of color where their book is a debut that is published in the last 5 years. For this one, I think I'm going to be going with Beast of Prey by Anya Gray. This is a debut novel. I've heard so many people recommending this series to me. I love this cover. It is so gorgeous. And I believe it's a completed series, which is really nice as of like last year, I want to say. So I'm very excited to pick this one up. Next up, we have Survival, and that is just any type of book where the primary goal of the book is survival. They left that really open, so the world is pretty much your oyster in this one. I would like any recommendations that you guys have for this one, but I think I'm going to be going with Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes. I liked, where is it? Her first book. And now I can't find it on my shelves because I have completely forgotten the name of it. But anyway, I liked her first book, and so I do really want to read this one. It just recently came out. It is highly anticipated. Again, love the cover. And they are trying to survive an abandoned planet, a hidden past, and a deadly danger. Then we have a couple that are going to be like wild cards for me. The next is to judge a book by its cover. The hard mode is to know nothing about it. Don't read the synopsis. Just judge the book by its cover. I do this a lot. A lot when I go into a bookstore, so I'm sure that I will find something at some point, but I don't have a hardcore book in place for this one. In the next row, we have Set in a Small Town. The hard mode for this one is that the town can be real or fictional, but the broader setting must be our world, not a fictional world. So I think like Where He Can't Find You would be a good example. I don't think that that's a real town in Illinois, but it's definitely like set on Earth. I don't have a book for this one, so if you guys have any suggestions, leave that down in the comments for me. 5 short stories. This is obviously to read 5 short stories. The hard mode is always to read the full collection. And this one, Bella Roth just recently hinted that she is going to have a story coming out in a romantasy anthology that's coming out later this year. So I'm holding out for that one. I know nothing about it. There's no cover, there's no other authors, there's no release date, there's no nothing. So who knows if it'll even happen within the confines of this readathon. But that's what I'm holding out for. So as of right now, that's what I'm going with. Otherwise, I might do Rivers of Silver by S.A. Chakraborty. I think I put that on this TBR every single year, but one day I swear I'm going to read it. Next up, we have Eldritch Creatures, which is basically to read a being that is uncanny, unearthly, or weird. This can be a god or monster from another plane or another realm. They're usually beyond mortal. Basically, it's just a weird creature. But the hard mode for this one is that it cannot be something that is related to the mythos that was created by H.P. Lovecraft. I don't know much about that mythos, didn't even know that was a thing, so hopefully this will be relatively easy. The one that I have in place for this right now is the Book of Zog by Alec Hudson. That's definitely a weird creature. I don't know. Yeah, that's definitely a weird creature. But if you have suggestions, leave those down below for me. Then we have reference materials. This is a book that has like a map or a glossary or something like that in it. And the hard mode is that it needs to have at least 2 types of materials. This one should be a relatively easy one for me to hit later down the line. I'll just kind of fill it in when I get there. A lot of fantasy books have both, so I don't think it will be very hard for me to fit. And last but not least is the dreaded book club or read along, and that is to read a book that is hosted by one of the Reddit communities. They have a list, and the hard mode is to read a current selection and participate in the discussion. I'm not a Reddit gal. I don't participate in discussions on Reddit very often. I don't love their like selection of books, but even when I read their selection of books, dead silence. That's the S.A. Barnes one that was on there last year. They just don't give me enough notice. It's just the month before that you get what's going to be the next month, which makes it kind of hard for me to participate since I plan my TBRs and my videos out a little bit further in advance than what they suggest. Okay guys, so that is all of the prompts. Those are all of my books and my tentative TBR. Obviously this changes a lot over the course of the year as I find new things and learn about new things or new things come out, but I love just creating a TBR, seeing what I hope to read throughout the year, seeing all of the prompts. Again, I will link all of the information for our fantasy bingo down in the description box for you guys in case you want to check it out. Please leave me all of the suggestions down in the comments below. I absolutely want to know, and I know others are looking for suggestions as well. If you want to check check out my TBR from last year, I will link that up here for you guys. As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are all in the description box below. Please give this a big thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!